Dr. Jacquelin Maxwell. She motivates and partners with people to push through adversities, eradicate misspoken impossibilities, while facing the impact of destiny incompleteness due to loss and unresolved grief. That's our guest today. We're going to get right into it right here on the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show, right after this quick intro. Don't you move.
Whoa. Why y'all so happy?
You don't know? Sharvette Mitchell is on the radio.
It's time to get motivated, excited, and influenced. Why? It's the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show, live from Richmond, Virginia. And now, here to motivate, excite, and influence you, Sharvette Mitchell.
Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show, broadcasting live from the capital city of Richmond, Virginia, but heard all across the World Wide Web. Welcome to all of those that are coming in live. Hey, Periscope, give me some hearts. Hello to those that are on Facebook that are joining us. Hello, Tara. Thank you for popping on in. Hey, girl. Hey, that's my mom, Betty, my real mom. Hey, mom. Thanks for popping in. If you're watching over on YouTube, just give us some hearts and some likes. Guess what? Even if you are catching the podcast view or the replay, let us know whenever you are listening and watching. We are so excited to have you here on the show. Listen, we're getting the virtual studio warmed up for you right now. My guest is hanging out there, having some virtual snacks as you guys are coming on in. And so we appreciate you. Hello, Periscope. Shalom. Yes, that's my big sister, my blood sister. Welcome. All right. So go ahead and share this broadcast out. As you know, with the goal of the show being that we motivate, excite, and influence, we continue to bring you phenomenal guests every single week. If you're new to me, I'm Sharvette Mitchell, and I work with female entrepreneurs and a few lucky men to help them build their online platforms and personal brands so that they generate more revenue with an amazing online brand. I do that in a couple of ways, with one-on-one services, with group coaching. You might know me from my Hey Girl Hey Facebook group. If you're hanging out in the Facebook group and you're checking this at any point, just type Hey Girl Hey in the comments. And this platform here, the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show. So let me introduce my guest so we can jump right on in and get into things. Dr. Jacquelin White, we call her Dr. Jackie, is a grief recovery specialist, empowerment speaker, life coach, and leadership consultant. Dr. Jackie has an earned doctorate of strategic leadership from Regent University School of Business and Leadership in Virginia Beach, Virginia. As a result of her extensive background in the human services field, Dr. Jackie is one of a few professionals nationally recognized and selected by the Grief Recovery Method Institute. And as a transformational coach, she helps people transform their minds, change their behavior, and equip them with tools to live with purpose. Without further ado, I'm bringing up to the mic right now, Dr. Jackie. Hello, welcome.
Hey. Hello. How are you, Sharvette?
I am doing wonderfully. How are you doing today?
Excellent. Yes. Thank you for this opportunity.
Yes. And so I want to actually jump in and talk about really how you got started in this space. Let's go back, how you got started in the space of helping people with their purpose and, really live their lives to the fullness.
Wow. Well, as a young child, I always knew I wanted to help. I always had that desire, that passion to help others. And once I learned that, the nursing field was going to require a lot of biology and some things that I wasn't very interested in, I said, well, no, it's not going to be nursing. Right. And as time went on, I realized that I was interested in why people thought the way that they thought and why they behaved the way that they behaved. And so that's how that began. Now, as far as the grief part, and that's real interesting in how, and I'm going to have to say that it was nothing but God that brought me into that place. I was interested in knowing more about death and dying and thanatology and those kinds of areas. But it really wasn't until I was introduced in 2012 to the Grief Recovery Institute, and I went through a weekend, a transformational weekend of grief recovery. And I knew it was going to be experiential. So I came ready to be a big girl, but I also, recognized, okay, I'm not sure where this is going. Well, where it took me, Sharvette, was it helped me to understand, one, what grief is all about, that it is normal. It is a natural, it happens.
Yes.
We're a lot of losses right now. And what it also did was it helped me to understand about unresolved, incomplete emotional baggage. Okay. So I'm like, well, now I know that, this went on in life and that went on in life. But as I started to really unpack the baggage, I had to acknowledge that there was a lot of unfinished, unresolved emotional communication as a result of the loss of what I experienced as a child in my parents' divorce. And while that was not necessarily a real painful time, I guess I just put it aside. I didn't recognize until as I went through the grief recovery method that was me experiencing a lot of losses. The loss of daughter and father.
Yeah.
The loss of normalcy. I think back that there were times in which the other little girls did something with their dad, or even I remember going to the debutante ball, and it was with my uncle. My uncle was my chaperone as far as my father. And so while I was like, oh, I'm fine with that, as I got older and as I understood what grieving is all about, any change in a natural pattern of behavior. And I was thinking, wow, any change. And sometimes it can be a conflictual change. I mean, a change could be you're really excited to know that your little girl is going to college, but you're kind of sad too because you don't want to see her leave.
Oh, this is so good. I love how you are breaking this down. Keep going. To those that are coming on in, those that are coming on in, welcome. You're hanging out here on the Sharvette Mitchell radio show. We've got Dr. Jacquelin, we call her Dr. Jackie, White Maxwell, here dropping some nuggets. And I'm so glad that you're going in this direction, because sometimes when people see grief recovery or anything related to grief, the only thing that comes to some people's mind is someone that has transitioned from this planet to somewhere. They have left planet Earth. They have gone. And so I love that you're breaking down all of what really loss and grief is. And if you're watching and you are anywhere in the world, there is some loss that we are collectively all experiencing. Yes, I love that. LaWanda said baggage will keep you in bondage. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Yes, Tara's like, this is good. Okay, so keep talking about that. That was good. Dig into that some more.
Okay, so as far as my experience, what I also realized as I started learning more about grief and grief recovery, that there were some signs. I'm thinking, all is well. Well, and these were things that I had learned as a child. See, we are actually taught, Sharvette, how to obtain things and how to earn things and how to grab hold of things. That's what we're talking about. Get a good education and get a nice home and get a good job and a wonderful spouse. But we aren't taught. So when you lose those things, or when those things are no longer available or accessible, what do you do? And that's what I saw happening to me. So I'm thinking, all is well. But as I started looking back, I realized, and a part that I didn't share that I need to also include is that a part of the loss that I had to look at and do something about and work through had to do with grief and the disease of addiction. So concerning my father, and I thank God for him, but he at one point in time, alcoholism was a major component of our environment. And as he was able at a different time in his life to get the recovery he needed, then I recognize, okay, I need to take care of me. And so that's where that grieving piece comes. See, and then God in his infinite wisdom, he would have me in later years to work with and to do therapy with persons in recovering addicts. One of the things I was able to also do was to provide them with the grief recovery method, helping them to see, for example, if for example, let's even just use alcoholism.
Yes.
Well, that becomes at some point in time your best friend. And if you are saying, okay, I got to do something about this, I got to change this behavior, it's impacting my family, I'm losing friends, I'm losing my family, my children won't speak to me, then you're realizing, okay, I'm having some losses.
Yes.
So there's a grieving process in addiction. Then for that family, there's a grieving process as well. So I realized all of that was laying on top of each other. So now I'm talking, from the age of probably 12 years old to 45 years old. And all of that was laying on top. Now, some of the things that I also am aware of and that I teach even now is those short-term energy relieving behaviors. I call them STIRBs. Okay? So the things that you do to kind of stuff down those emotions, the ones you don't want to deal with. Okay. Right. Well, grandma says pressure will bust a pipe. Okay. So I had to figure out some kind of way we got to do something different. I'm thinking I'm fine. Well, when I realized, an only child, I'm doing well, and I'm, in college, in my own home, but there were times when I was really lonely. Okay. There were times in which I would isolate. All of these are symptoms. There were times in which there was but for some people, the appetite piece. Okay. For some, it's like, I just can't eat. Well, for me, it was the other direction.
All right.
And as I watched myself, the scale go higher and higher and higher, I said, there has to be a change. So the grieving, there are tangible losses, and then there are intangible losses. So yes. We think about the death, the divorce. We think, we think about loss of job, loss of home. But Sharvette, think about all of the losses. And if you think about losses that you haven't, maybe someone has never even assisted you in dealing with. And then you come into 2020.
Wow.
And now what we're doing is laying all of that on top of the pandemic.
Yeah. I love how you are breaking this down, Dr. Jackie. Oh my goodness. I love how you're breaking this down. I wanted to mention something came to mind while you were talking. There is a series on Netflix. I don't know if any of our listeners or viewers have seen it, called The Crown. And it's about the current Princess Queen Elizabeth, who's living today over in London. It's a chronicle of her life in the beginning. And so her father was the king at the time. Her father died when she was probably, they were grooming her to take over the throne, take over the crown. They were grooming her. Her father died in her early 20s. I'm talking about those that listen, I'm talking about the current Queen Elizabeth. When her father died, her grandmother called her on the phone. You can watch it on Netflix. They need to give us some sponsorship, Netflix. Her grandmother called her on the phone and said, listen, you have two things to grieve. You've got to grieve the death of your father, but you also need to grieve the life that you once knew. Because from this point on, the only thing that matters is the crown. And so I thought that was so poignant. And you can see that's right or wrong, but her grandmother was setting her up like, you got two things going on. You because the life that you had, you don't have anymore, because all we got to think about and focus on is the crown. Right. So that, that piece, talk a little bit about, when people when they lose, like really changes in life, like you said, some of the things, even graduations that people missed or weddings that had to be because of COVID. Talk a little bit about that. Mm-hmm.
Yes, most definitely. I mean, there are so many, over 40 stressors, life events that are associated with grief, that are associated with, needing to grieve. And as we have discussed, when we think about it, there were persons who could not attend, something that they had been planning for a long time. It might have been a vacation. It might have been a wedding, or they could not move into a home, or, whatever the case might have been.
Yes.
There are a lot of losses that have been presenting itself during this time. I have a heart for pastors and pastors' wives. My husband is a fourth generation pastor. And one of the things that I became very aware of is that there are so many pastors and ministers who are grieving.
Yes.
And I recognize that, not really sure, okay, so where do we figure this one out? How do we figure this out? Or who has the book on this one? Or, how do we keep the church thriving, not just surviving, but thriving? How do we help the older people to still feel connected, still feel a part of? How do we take care of our senior citizens or our seasoned saints? We also, if you think about anytime any leader really, and I did a blog recently, and it was entitled "Intentional Leaders Intentionally Grieve."
Because is that over on your website? Is that blog on your website? So you can screenshot the screen. We got the website address right there. Good. Yeah.
And so, as we go into various environments, work environments, there is grief going on in the workplace. There has always been grief going on in the workplace, but now more so than ever. And if you think about it, think about the people who are at work more than they've been at home. So being at home, that's a challenge. Yeah. But then also they've missed out work family, so to speak. And so going back to work is different.
It's different. Oh, wow. You know what? This is a great place to take a little break when we come back. So I think those that are listening, those that are watching, welcome. If you just popped in and you're like, oh, this is good. What y'all talking about? Who is this? This is Dr. Jacquelin Maxwell, grief recovery specialist, empowerment speaker, transformational life coach, author, all of that. And we're talking about grief and loss that really everybody can say they've had a touch of it, whether you have, lost someone as far as they have passed away, they have died, but we are in an era where all of us are really collective. I thank you, Carla R. Jenkins, for sharing this on Twitter. I put in Periscope, collective grief and collective loss. So I think we've identified enough loss for the audience to realize or know, okay, that's touched me in some kind of way. When we come back from the break, I'd love you to give a couple tips of how do we start coming up out of, how do we recognize what to do? What are some things to do? Can you hang out with us a little longer?
Sure.
All right. Awesome. All right. Thank you guys for popping on in and joining us here on the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show. We're going to a quick commercial break. And when we come back, we want to give you some tips and tools and thought processes around the grief and loss. We'll be right back. Hey girl, hey, welcome. All right. Welcome back. This segment is brought to you by the 5th Annual Pop-Up Conference for Female Entrepreneurs, my signature conference that's happening in the capital city of Richmond, Virginia, November 5th, 6th, and 7th. Socially distanced, we will be, and mask required. Yes, we will. But we're putting together a phenomenal panel. Speakers like you're hearing on the show. So welcome and thank you to all those that are popping in. Thank you, Tracy, saying this is such a great topic. Thank you, Janice. Dealing with loss is so real. We are. It's a pleasure to present this to you and bring this to you. Thanks for those that are hanging out. Hey girl, hey, in the Hey Girl, Hey group. Thank you for attending. We look forward to having you. Let me bring Dr. Jackie back up to the virtual mic. And so let's talk about we've shared. I think you have done an excellent job of sharing and get our interest peaked and our thought process peaked around what loss is and grief. So what are some steps? What do we do once we recognize we're dealing with loss or grief? What are maybe 2 or 3 things we should do?
Okay. So that's really where I come in. What I've had the opportunity to do is to help people to recognize that incompleteness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, granted, taking care of yourself is important. You know, we've been talking about mental health and mental health awareness and mental illness, and grief has to be a part of that. We no longer can place that same stigma because we don't even want to talk about grief.
Yeah.
Grief, as you said, people immediately think death and dying or maybe divorce. But, you know, when we talk about the woman who has had a miscarriage, there's a major grieving process of loss that she needs to experience. So it's really about reaching out and talking to people. Now, what often we don't do very well is know what to say.
Yeah.
You know, no, we don't know what you're going through. It's really better to say, I can't imagine. Mm-hmm. Even if you had a similar experience, we don't compare grieving or loss experiences. That's just not wise because your experience is going to be different than my experience. You know, even if you might have gone through something similar, but it's better to say, I just can't imagine. And I'm very sorry of the experience that you've had. And to be a listener, that's the key. We don't have to talk. We need to listen, to allow our heart to have ears and to listen and be engaged and to help that person protect their heart. And it's never too soon to reach out to go through this completeness process.
Yeah.
I say to grievers all the time, I say to persons who have had any type of loss, you know, don't wait. You know, for some reason we have this myth or this understanding of, well, time will heal.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've talked with grievers and I've asked them, okay, can you think back 20 years of a loss that you've never dealt with? And they're like, well, yeah, I can. And then I said, well, okay, 30 years. And it's like, yeah. And then in some cases, they're able to even see how it has been passed on through the family.
Oh,
so
wow.
Transgenerational. You know, that I did another blog and a Facebook Live on how secrets keep you sick, and you know what's said in this house stays in this house.
Oh wow!
And that again, that does not push us or propel us to a place of being complete with our emotional communication. So being able to listen, being able to provide support, but in a very constructive way. You know, not destructive, and also studying, you know, having an understanding about what the grieving process is all about. Then also, Sharvette, it's important to recognize that grieving is a place of compassion. God wants us to be more merciful and compassionate. So, you know, if colleagues are hurting or whomever, this is an opportunity to bring some solidarity to the forefront. This is an opportunity. Yeah, we can social distance, but when it's all done and said, we know that we are part of community. And in order to be a part of a community, there has to be common unity. Well, what that common unity is all about in this case are some losses that we are experiencing globally.
Yeah, globally. And I love that you said, there's not a time stamp, so there's not a, well, you should be over it, in a year, or you should be over this in 5 years. And so it's so would you agree that grief and loss and how people deal with it is very vastly different from person to person?
Most definitely. And we should allow one another to have that experience. It's not going to be the same. It might be two sisters in a home, and they have to move. Well, one might be jumping up and down. I am so glad that we're leaving. We're moving to a new house. And the other one is grieving.
Wow. So this is good, y'all. I don't know. This is good. This is like Oprah Life class right here. I want to mention while they're listening and while you're viewing, if you jump over to the website on the screen, jacquelavelle.com, that's Dr. Jackie's website. She has a complimentary ebook about grief. So you can grab a complimentary, any grief or loss, anything that you have experienced. And I do want to say we are not downplaying any kind of, all grief and loss has weight. And so there is a complimentary ebook, jacquelavelle.com, right there on the screen, and go pick up your complimentary copy there. So I want to make sure. And also you're available for working with people one-on-one. You have a 8-week one-on-one program that you can work with people. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Certainly. So while during this 8-week process, I don't do therapy. This is based on an educational process, but I am certified as an advanced grief recovery method specialist by the Grief Recovery Method Institute. And they have been doing this for over 70 years. It's also all over the world. They have taken this to Africa. The United Kingdom, they're doing some great things. And so what goes on is that you learn about grief. We have you actually have some heart work assignments. I don't call them homework. They're heart work assignments. But you learn about what is grief. You learn about what is the grieving process. And then you unlearn those myths like we were just talking about. Don't feel bad. You can get another dog, or she's gone to a better place, or it's good that you got other children. I understand, but you gotta, no. We learn about those myths that we've been taught, and then we also learn. The opportunity is there to learn a set of structured action steps, which can lead one to work on at least one relationship. And often, whatever that relationship is that's the closest to your heart, whatever that relationship is that you need to work on that has left you the most emotionally incomplete at that moment. And let me say this, it might be a pet. Okay, I'm real aware, and we do work, and there is a handbook specific just to the loss of pets. So I'm sensitive to a lot. It might be relationships, or it might be an animal. And then if we are able to do additional work as far as during this 8 weeks, at least one more completeness as far as another relationship, we'll attempt to do that, because I want everyone to be able to leave and feel like they are equipped with the knowledge, the understanding about what has transpired. In other words, you've gone through the discovery piece, and then as you get to the end of that 8-week experience, then it's more of the recovery part of it.
Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So listeners and viewers, jump over to jacquelavelle.com, and you can grab a complimentary one-on-one session just to talk with Dr. Jackie to see this might be a good fit for you. So jump right over there on the screen, screenshot it, and connect with her. And so there was a great question that came up. Gwen Finley, who is in the medical field. And so she said, what happens when the grief begins to cause sickness to the grieved?
Yeah.
Any thoughts on that?
Most definitely. I think, and is Gwen a part of you said the medical field?
She's a nurse. Yes.
Right. Okay. And thank you, Gwen, for the question, but also thank you for the work that you do. And I'm so excited the fact that you would ask that question. Often, and more so now than ever before, we are seeing persons who are dealing with all kinds of illnesses associated. If you think back to a time in which there was a loss, and this is one of the things that I often will ask someone who's experiencing grief or going through the 8 weeks, did you experience any accidents? Did you experience any illnesses? Because they are associated with grief.
Wow.
More often than not, because once again, if you have been suppressing these emotions that has been pulling that emotional energy, pulling on you in whatever way.
Yeah.
It's been coming out. It has been seeping out in different ways.
Yeah.
And for some, it comes about through various illnesses.
Wow.
So that's very true. I think that's an excellent point. Excellent point.
So acknowledgement. There's another question coming in. Duchess, thank you so much for your comment. Thank you, because I'm grieving right now. How do we get to a point that we can sleep again? Dr. Jackie, any thoughts, any guidance on that?
Wow, Duchess, thank you. Thank you for being willing to share that. And I acknowledge your loss. And I want to honor your loss at this time. I think it's so very important, never before, to take care of ourselves, to listen to what our bodies are saying, to listen to what's coming out of our mouths. It's like, okay, where did that just come from? And if you're experiencing something now, and the loss of sleep, that is a sign of grief. The appetite, change in appetites, and all of those things. And I encourage you to reach out to me. I'd be more than happy to talk further with you. But the key is to, if you have someone that you feel that you can share with at the moment, please do that. If there's someone that's close by that you just need to share the experience, to talk it through. But it is essential, because we realize that even with support groups, they are excellent.
Yeah.
One of the things though that happens with support groups is so important to move from a place of just sharing and just and reliving or telling the experience to a place of completeness. So that's the difference really between a support group and the grief recovery method and the work that I do.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Thank you for that. Wow. Amazing. So our time has flown by. I am telling you, thank you so much, Dr. Jackie, for being here and just pouring into our audience. And I know that you have for those in the school system, in the education, you actually have a special webinar that's coming up. So talk a little bit about the special webinar you have coming up.
Yes. Oh, I am so excited, Sharvette. So this is for educators, anybody that works with children. It's called Helping Children Navigate Loss. Okay. Keep in mind, we weren't taught this in school.
Right.
All right. This is critical. But parents, caregivers, youth pastors, transition specialists, healthcare providers, pediatric specialists, anyone. This is going to be Thursday. It's a Zoom webinar, Thursday, October the 29th, from 7 to 8:30. And so you would need to register, because we have our early bird special that's going on, but you would need to register bit.ly/children's loss webinar. Okay, bit.ly/children's loss webinar. And you can go, you can reach out to me and I'll be glad to give you more information. However, I want you to go on and register because that early bird special ends October the 16th.
Awesome.
And now I'm going to say this, Sharvette.
Yes.
The first 2 people who register for this webinar, I will bless you because I believe in sowing.
Oh, wow.
But I will bless you with a grief recovery book. Now, you won't get this one with all these tabs. You see, I've been reading, but you will get the first 2 people that registers. I will make sure that I bless you with this book. Okay.
Wonderful.
Right.
And registration is the early bird is only $47. So this is, you go to Arby's 2 times and you've spent that.
Right.
And anything we've discussed, jump over, to Dr. Jackie's website, which is right here on the screen, screenshot it. We'll come back in all of the platforms and drop the link for the webinar, the direct link, so you can click that there. But you can grab a complimentary, all the time you have a complimentary, meet and greet call that you have available for people to just, chat and give further direction. And so the last question, the goal of my show is to motivate, excite, and influence. Right. What continues to motivate you?
Repeat the question. What
continues to motivate you?
What continues to motivate me? When I see the transformation happening in others, when I see people getting whole, getting healed, getting delivered, and propelling and walking into their destiny.
Well said. Well said. Well, thank you for stopping by again and pouring in with our audience. We are excited just to have had the opportunity to feature you, and we will see you later on the web.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right. Awesome. Thank you so much again for all those that hung out here. If this was your first time experiencing the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show, welcome. I'm Sharvette Mitchell, and I work with female entrepreneurs and a few lucky men to help them build their online platforms and personal brands so that they generate more revenue with an amazing online brand. And I'm really focused on your visibility and your marketing. And so this is one of the platforms, one of the ways that I do what I do. You can jump over to Sharvette.com if you missed any portion of this, or if you're like, hey, what other guests have you had? Who do you have coming up? You can find out all of that at Sharvette.com. Certainly, if you're listening in iTunes and all of that, you can click the link in the show notes. Also, we have the full bio for our guests, so you can learn more there, and then any and all of our guests. Thank you so much for the amazing Periscope listeners, Facebook listeners, my sister, everybody that's been listening in. Share this out on your platforms and your pages. And until we meet again, peace and love. Bye.
Live from Richmond, Virginia, you've been listening to the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show. Get Sharvette Mitchell every Tuesday at 6 p.m. interviewing all the stars you want to hear from. So until next week, stay motivated, excited, and influenced. This is the Sharvette Mitchell Radio Show.